Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Guided by Third Wheel. Today, Amber and I wanted to talk a little bit about an excerpt that somebody sent me from the Al-Anon book. And they were like, I think this would make a good podcast. And so, first of all, shout out to them. Shout out to anyone who wants to give us podcast topics because we are always looking. But as soon as he sent it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is literally perfect. So I'm going to read this little blurb from the book, and then I think we should talk about it. So it says, today's reminder: very little that happens in my daily encounters is worth my worry, resentment, or feeling sorry for myself. If I am always ready to take offense and be hurt, I'm selling my contentment very cheaply. I must remember to be good to myself. So I read that and I was like, that is fire. I'm selling my contentment very cheaply. Like, sometimes I feel like you read things and it's like, hit you upside the head like with a 2x4.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I can think of so many times when I have sold my contentment for pennies. Perhaps when I've given it away for free, right? And it made me think, what a great way to think about protecting our peace, right? Is thinking about, like, in what instances have I sold my happiness and my peace for nothing or for very little, and what can I do to prevent doing that in the future?
Right.
So, where should we start? Do we want to talk about times when we've sold our contentment very cheaply? I mean, I feel like I have hundreds.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've sold my contentment a lot. You know, and sometimes it's selling it to avoid conflict. Right? Like, I'm going to be uncomfortable in myself. Now that I'm saying it out loud, it makes no sense. I'm going to be uncomfortable in myself to avoid discomfort. You know,
I choose discomfort in a different way, but I think perhaps that goes back almost to the people pleasing. Like, let me take all of the pain, all of the suffering, all of the discomfort, and hold it.
But I can control it. I can control it if it's within me, right? Like, I have control over how I manage my own discomfort, opposed to if I create discomfort all around me, I don't have any control on as to where that goes, right? And what ends up happening from that place. Also, why would I choose for my own peace to suffer?
To avoid conflict. But I do think a lot of us sell peace to avoid conflict.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a huge one.
Yeah. You know, I think there is another way to do that where you don't create the conflict because you recognize that this conflict isn't going to be productive. Right? Sometimes you have a disagreement with another person, right? And it is a philosophical disagreement. It is a political disagreement. It is, you know, something of that nature. And really taking a moment to say, am I going to change this person's mind?
Right.
Or is this conversation worth it, right? Am I going to be influenced by what this person is saying? Or are they going to be influenced by what I'm saying? And if the answer to that is no, then why am I going to have the conversation and sell my peace?
Yes.
To have a non-productive conversation. So in that sense, I might just say, I'm going to avoid this. But in that avoidance, I have to be okay with remaining in my peace and not like sitting back and holding grudges or, you know, being mad about it or being irritated about it or whatever. I have to be able to say, like, shine on the way you want to, and I will the way I want to, and I don't need to worry about what you're doing.
And I'm truly not going to let that affect me internally. Because I think that, like, contentment, right? Selling my contentment very cheaply. The contentment is what's, like, happening on the inside, right? And sometimes that's protected by engaging in conflict. And sometimes that's protected by not engaging in conflict. But really, it's like an inside job. Because, I mean, I sell my contentment left and right, as I imagine most of us do. But I think about it a lot in the context of work. You know, when you do, like, the work that I do, you run up against the same shit over and over again, right? Workforce issues, capacity issues, funding issues, prioritization issues that are all like directly affecting the people that my team is working with, right? And I find myself, particularly I would say when I'm not in a good space otherwise, just getting fucking so upset and incensed about like, I have known there is a housing shortage for 5 years. Like, why am I letting this spin me out of control? And sometimes I react in a way that probably is and feels appropriate, but I am like churning on the inside. Nobody else knows that I've sold my contentment because I'm like maintaining a good face, right? Because you learn to fake it. But I'm so fucking upset on the inside. And I think that's the piece that I'm thinking about too, is like, not only how do we determine how to behave and engage externally to protect our contentment, but how do we also do the internal work where it's like, I'm not going to let this shake my foundation, right? I'm going to recognize that this is upsetting. I'm going to recognize that this is an obstacle. I'm going to recognize that this rubbed me the wrong way, but I can't let this ruin my fucking day today or my week.
Yeah. I've not read up a lot on radical acceptance, but I feel like this might fall into that, where I know that this is a problem.
Yes.
Right? And I know that I don't like it. And I also know I can only do this amount.
Right.
Right. And so I put forth that amount, and now I have to accept the fact that like that is all I can do right now, and I can be content with that internally, opposed to continuing to be like, this is so unfair. I can't believe this is happening. Why is the world like this?
Yes.
You know, and then you're churning that discontentment within yourself because you're just focused on all of these pieces that are true, but I don't have the control over. I have to say, I've done what I can do. I hope other people do what they can do. I will continue to do what I can do, but I'm not going to sit here in a space of being discontent with my own life because I can't fix the entire world today.
Yes, I can't fix the entire world. I can't control this person's actions and behavior towards me, those types of things. And I think when you were talking, I was like, man, this does relate back to, maybe we just talk about the same shit over and over again. But I was like, this relates back to not being tied to the output, but being tied to the input, right? The understanding that like, I can't, why would I trade my peace worrying about and or trying to control the outcome, right? If I recognize these problems, if these problems, back to my example about work, are like bothering me, causing me discontent, making me angry, to your point, I need to think about like, what is a realistic and effective and impactful input that I can provide, right? Where I am still able to protect my peace and protect my happiness, instead of being like, well, I need us to all end up over here. I need this problem to be solved.
Right.
I need, this to be different. Like if I'm so focused on that output and not on the input, then it's like I'm trading my peace and happiness because all eyes on something that doesn't exist yet and likely never will exist.
Right. And that you can't control how it all shakes out, right? So we create a goal in our mind of like, this is how it needs to be in order for things to be right.
Right.
Well, we're trying to control how things are going to work externally at that point. So being more apt to say, I know that this isn't working. What can I do to maybe contribute in the right direction? We'll see what happens.
Yes.
Hopefully we get to a good outcome there. And I think this brings us kind of back to a lot of things that we've talked about is, how do I not do this, right? How do I get to a place that I'm not constantly creating my own misery?
Yes.
Right? How do I get to the place that I'm not dying on every hill that I am presented with?
Yep.
Right. And I think a lot of that has to do with that self-reflection and being present and asking ourselves before we jump in, what is the outcome going to be here? Is this good for me? Right. I say that and then I hear people in the back of my head saying like, well, that's very selfish to be like, how is this going to work for me? Right. But at the end of the day, if I'm discontent and I'm in a place where I'm churning around certain issues or I'm ruminating about them, it's going to impact the entire rest of my life.
Yes.
right? It's going to impact my relationships. It's going to impact my ability to do other things that actually do need to be done and I can affect change on.
Right.
It's going to impact my own growth. And so it is important that people are thinking about, how am I preserving my own peace? Because when you can preserve your own peace, you will create peace around you.
Yes. And I think it's even just like you said, like being grounded, being present, and just, I have been, since he sent me that, I've been asking myself that question, right? Like when I feel myself getting irritated, getting mad, getting upset, being like, is this worth your contentment in this moment? Is this worth your peace right now? I get really irritated when I get interrupted at work, right? Like if I have nothing on my schedule and I'm like, oh man, I got like this 2-hour block. These are the things that I want to get done. And then people like bust into my office with just like the most inconsequential bullshit, right? And I am just like, are you fucking kidding me? Right? Like, but then it's like, Jill, this will literally take 3 minutes.
Right.
Why are you getting upset? Like, why are you getting anxious about this? Or, you know, the same people that find a reason to be ugly and backhanded to me every week, they're ugly and backhanded to me again, as they have been for the last, 110 weeks of my life. And I'm like, I cannot believe that this person is being ugly to me.
Right.
And it's like, of course they're being ugly to you, because they're always ugly to you.
Right.
And are you going to let this person doing what they've always done upset you? I feel like it's been helpful to ask myself that when I start to feel it, right? When I start to feel like the blood pressure raise, like the little stress headache set in, the anger kind of come up, be like, okay, is this really worth it today?
Right.
And sometimes it is, because sometimes you do have to stand up for yourself, right? Sometimes you do have to protect a boundary, right? And that discomfort is a little flag to you, like, ooh, you might need to do something here, right? To protect yourself that way. But a lot of times it's just like, no, you are selling your peace for pennies, literally.
And can I just have a direct, not even conversation, like people are coming in and they're, like it's the same person, they're always ugly to you, they're ugly to everybody else, you watch it happen, like this is just
not nice.
how they're going through the world right now, this is where they are on their journey at this point, right? And accepting that,
yes,
right, I can't control you, I can't control the way that you're going to navigate the world. I hope that this gets better, because, and what I always think when I see people that behave that way is how awful.
Yes.
How awful to be in a place where I feel like that's what I have to do every day. That can't feel good, right? It can't feel good as a person to like just be walking around and creating chaos in your wake, right? And I think about that, and that often grounds me enough to have some compassion,
yes,
right? Like
have
what
some
is
empathy for them.
What has happened that you feel like this is what you need to do,
right?
Right. And then also, I'm not going to sit here and allow someone to try to come in and take away my peace, right? So, which is my responsibility. So it may just be that I say, like, I don't really like the way you talk to me. We're not going to have a conversation about it. I'm just going to say, I don't really like the way that you talk to me. And maybe give a couple examples and say, I would appreciate it if that doesn't happen again. But after that, no matter what they say, I have to be grounded enough in myself to be like, I said what I needed to say. That's all I can do.
Right.
Right? Move it on.
Right. Exactly.
And not sit here and ruminate on, I wish I would have said this. And, they responded this way. How dare they?
Yes. And I think that rumination piece is big too, right? When we talked about it being an internal job. I think that most of us, and we've talked about this too, most of us spend a lot of time fearful of the future, right? And thinking about that. And a lot of us spend time ruminating on the past or past conversations, or why would that person do that to me, or why did they say that, or why did I react the way that I did, right? Why did that go down the way that it did? Why did that have to happen to me?
Right.
I'm a big ruminator, right? So I could like give hypotheticals of what that sounds like all day long. But I think in that instance, with the being fearful about the future, ruminating on the past, we're not necessarily selling our contentment to someone else. Like, we're just straight up taking it away from ourselves, right? Like, we're giving our contentment away right in that moment as well. Yeah. Because, you know, sometimes, like, shitty things happen, right? Sometimes people are mean to you. Sometimes you don't react the way that you should have. Sometimes a situation did not go the way that it could have had you or someone else behaved differently. But how much of that past are you going to let take away from your present? Are you going to steal your current peace, your current contentment away by fixating on something that happened months ago? And I think that can be like a really hard thing to let go of as well. I think sometimes we let the past steal our contentment also.
Yeah. And that's that inner work, right? That's that inner work of self-forgiveness. That's that inner work of just determining that this isn't really what I need to hold on to anymore.
Right.
And figuring out why I felt like I had to hold on to it in the first place.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, I was thinking when you were saying that, like, if I were to make a list of things that I will, like, quickly sell my contentment for.
Yeah.
I think it's, like, a lot of, like you said, that inner work, like, that old shit. Like, I will sell my contentment quickly to, like, try to convince someone that I am worthy, that I am enough, that I am lovable, right? I'm like, I will take this piece and I will chuck it into the ocean and I will, like, embark on a crazy circus show of, like, why you should love me, right? Like, that's a big one for me. I am quickly willing to give up my contentment to obsess about, like, body stuff and how I look and how I'm showing up in the world. Yeah, it's interesting. And I'm trying to think about the type of people, too, that I'm willing to, like, because some people I feel like I'm really good at drawing boundaries with. I'm like, you're not putting, like, a hitch in my giddy up, you know? But some people, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I will twist myself into a pretzel for you. And it's like, what is that, right? Is that childhood? Is that family? I don't know. Why we're willing to let some people steal our peace and some people not. Or some situations steal our peace and some not.
Yeah. I mean, what we keep saying this, it goes back to those core wounds. Where did they come from? I will let body image steal my peace every day. Every day. I will let it steal my peace. It comes to a mealtime, and I am like, should I eat this? Should I eat this? Should I eat this? Should I eat this? And it's like, could you just, like, take a deep breath and put that away and have a meal and not be obsessed about what it is? And even, like, leading up to, like, okay, well, I know that I have to eat. What am I going to eat?
Right. And the obsessing. I will give my peace away, like, after I eat what I perceive as, like, a big meal or an unhealthy meal or too much bread. You know what I mean? Or something like that. Or, you know, I eat, like, 3 full meals in a day and then I also have a couple snacks. Like, that's probably what a normal person does. But if I eat that many times, it's like I sit and let that steal all of my peace.
Yep.
Every single time.
And, like, sit and ruminate on, okay, well, I did this. Now what are my next choices, right? Do I not eat tomorrow? Do I skip this? Do I do this? Do I just say fuck it and eat everything today because I, had some froyo? Like, I mean, it's things like that. So, I think we also, outside of other people around us and what they are doing and what we are witnessing in the world, we can also steal our own internal peace very easily by just what we're thinking, like what those thoughts are that are running through our head every day and what we are focused on every single day.
I was thinking that same exact thing when you were talking. I was like, we came on this podcast, I thought, to talk about, like, what do we do when other people, when external situations try to steal our peace and contentment. But really, now that I'm, like, sitting here thinking about me, I would say I take my own peace and contentment away way more than I let other people take my peace and contentment, which I would say maybe is growth, because I think maybe 5 or 10 years ago, not only was I taking my own contentment and peace away all the live long day, I was also letting everyone else do it. I do think perhaps it is easier, at least it has been easier for me, I'll say, to start to keep other people and situations from stealing my peace. But I think the hard work is, how do we keep ourselves from stealing our own peace?
Yeah. And going into the weird thought spirals. Obviously, it takes a lot of work. I don't know if it ever, I bet we always will have things that run through our head, right? Because we're humans and we have brains, which is unfortunate. But But, I mean, that's the nature of the beast, right? We have thought processes that happen. We've had trauma in our lives. We've had things that have happened. And so those things are going to pop up and we're going to, our body holds on to it. So it's what's going to go down. But I will say that as I have tried to put some of those old thought loops to bed, first off, you have to recognize that they're happening.
Yes. And that's part of that radical acceptance. You have to be like, this is like, I obsess about food. I obsess about body image. I obsess about whether people like me or not. Always. Just, I mean, that is just part of, thank you, universe, like for this adorable little piece of my personality and thought process.
Right. And once you see it, the harder part is once you see it, I do think it gets louder because it's like, oh, you see me now. Well, let me stake my claim here in your brain because I don't want it to be gone, right? And we go back to this was something that probably kept you safe at one point in time. These thought processes were. So they're just, that's what's happening there. But for me, I have to really, like, when I get into those loops, I have to stop myself. And sometimes I will, like, literally stop what I'm doing and I will, like, take a deep breath and I will picture myself grounded where I am and then determine, like, is this worth my time today?
Yes.
Is this a productive thought loop today? And normally it's not. And I can't tell you that 100% of the time that makes it better. But I think the awareness of it and the awareness that this isn't that important takes a little bit of the gravity of it away.
Yes. I think that you can, I don't think you're going to take it away with that, but you're going to like deflate that balloon a lot with that, right? Is you can say like, yes, this person was still mean to me. Like, yes, it hurt my feelings. Yes, it hit X, Y, and Z, trigger point, core wound, whatever you want to call it. But what real impact does this have on my job and career as a whole? Does this even have anything to do with my real life, right? Like with my family and my people that I care about and things like that. I do think you can deflate it quite a bit. And that perspective giving or taking allows you, I think, to make more thoughtful decisions on how to move forward. Don't you think?
Yeah. It's the pause. I mean, it is truly the ability to pause and to say, like, this is happening right now.
This is happening right now. And truly, how big of an impact is it really having on my life? And sometimes you might say, like, the pause, this is happening right now. And you think, like, truly, what kind of impact is this having? And sometimes you have to recognize the answer is going to be, like, a big one, right? Like, sometimes we do, our piece is going to go away for a big reason, for a lot of money, right? For, like, we're selling it for expensive this time around. But I think most of the time you will recognize this just doesn't have a big piece. I think another thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about that, when we stop, we like say, hey, what's really going on here, right? And we recognize maybe the trigger points and the core wounds. I think one thing that has been really helpful for me and has been like an ongoing process is like, how do I learn to like love all of those parts of me?
Yes.
For so long, I was like, oh my God, this is triggering my self-esteem. What the fuck is wrong with me? Why do I have such terrible self-esteem? Why can't I believe that I'm lovable? Why am I like this? Why am I the way that I am? And I just hated that part about me, right? So because I hated it, I always was like shoving it down. And I didn't even want to have the conversation like, oh, this is hitting X, Y, and Z wound, because I'm like, fuck that wound. Why are you such a pussy? Why are you so weak? Like, get over it, right?
Right.
And I think something that's been really helpful for me and has kind of like spread into many of these different issues and areas that we talk about is like learning to be like, yes, for some reason, I have terrible self-esteem issues, right? But here are some other things that are really great about my personality. And here are some of the really cool things about me that I think have stemmed from that, right? And just like reintegrating that part back into me so I can say like, oop, yep, this is rubbing up against that piece. And it's not like, oh, fuck that piece, get it out of here, I hate it all. It's like, this is just part of who I am. And that is something like a practice that has been really, really helpful for me.
Yeah. Once you start doing the work and you have that self-awareness, when you're willing to sit with those core wounds, those hard places, those, shadow aspects of yourself, you know what they are. Like, you become very familiar. It's like, oh, old friend, hello.
Hey there.
Right? And
you again.
when I have something that triggers that or reminds me of that, or I see my discontentment going away because of the core wound, a lot of times now I can trace it back very quickly, and I can see different incidents in my life where I'm like, oh, I'm reacting like I did there because I had to, right?
Right.
If you've heard me talk, I will say things are so cutie. And I will just sit there and I'll be like, oh, that's so cutie that you're trying to do this for me. But also, I don't need it.
I don't need it. Yep.
I don't need it.
And I appreciate you for doing it.
Right.
Because I think before I'd be like, Jesus, Jill, like, here you are with your maladaptive behavior again. And now it's just like, whoop. That's so cutie. and it's not even, it's like how, like, like when, like, a little kid, like, like, does something ridiculous, right? It's like, I feel like I'm going off on a tangent, but I think it'll work. So, like, a couple years ago, my little cousin, he's like 20 years younger than me. Him and his mom came into town, and he wanted to do an overnight, like, at my house, right? Because I'm like, very cool, right? And wanted to hang out with me, mostly wanted to hang out with Itty Bitty, my cat. So he, comes over, we get him all situated, everybody was at my house, and then, like, all the, like, quote unquote adults leave, right? And it's him and me. And literally they shut the door, and he looks at me and he's like, I know my mom said that I need to be, like, in bed reading by 10. He's like, but that's just, like, our little code word. Like, 10 really means midnight. And I was like, I was like, you're so fucking cute. Like, how cute is that? I was like, LOL, no, 10 means 10, right? Like, you'll be in your bed reading at 10. And just went on with it, right? And I feel like that's, like, the same energy, right? I want to bring to, like, when I, like, when I say something to myself that's just, like, fucking outlandish, right? Like, that's just crazy, and I know it's untrue, and we all know it's untrue, right? Instead of being like, Jill, you're such an idiot, like, why would you say that, right? Like, why would you lie? Like, what are you doing? Just be like, that's adorable. Embrace it in that spirit, know, and be like, but we're really going to go to bed at 10 o'clock, right? Or we're really going to do this. So, like, I feel like that's the energy sometimes we need to treat our core wounds with. It's like, I see what you did there. Valiant effort, right? Creative, but no, we're not going to do it.
Might have worked at a different time. Not anymore. Now we see you.
And it's sweet, and it's cute, and it's part of who you are. And I think that is the energy that I try to do. And I try to think about, like, little Jill sometimes, or, like, 14-year-old Jill sometimes, or 25-year-old Jill sometimes, and have some care and compassion and empathy for her.
Yeah. And how would you talk to her? How would you want somebody to talk to, like, 7-year-old you? You wouldn't be like, you idiot.
Like, Jesus, why would you do that?
No,
that's
like,
wrong.
Oh, look at you trying to navigate the world.
Yes.
Right?
You're getting in there. I say that at work all the time, because we have clients who make some poor choices, but for good reason. I'm always like, I respect the hustle. I respect the hustle that you're bringing. I get what you're doing by lying to me, by manipulating, by all that stuff. Like, I respect the hustle, but we're not going to do it.
Right.
And I think that integration piece has been really helpful for me in trying to maintain some of that inner peace, right? And not getting so mad at myself and stealing my contentment that way.
The stealing of contentment sounds like it is more about
an inside job.
Yeah. You're stealing, which is good news, right? Because we have control over that.
Yes.
We have control.
And I do think, I think there's a progression though. And there are times in my life, particularly when I'm not doing well internally, where I will let people externally take away my peace left and right. But I do think when I'm in a better place, that feels like a much easier space to navigate than the internal peace stealing.
Yeah. And do you think too that when you're stealing your internal peace yourself, reflecting on that and knowing that you're doing it to yourself is a way harder piece to face than that person was mean to me and they stole my peace?
Yes. Oh my gosh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I think when you're in that space of you can't sit with yourself and you're not recognizing that you're in essence creating your own misery and you're not willing to look at it when other people, because people are, literally every day something's going to happen around you that could potentially steal your peace, but you're like, I already don't have any, but I'd love to blame it on that.
Yes, and I think you have to have some self-awareness too. But I think the first part of the work is, how do we keep external situations and other people from derailing our fucking day and our mood and everything else?
Right.
And then I think that next layer of work is, maybe the next layer is asking yourself that question that you just said, right? Am I blaming my own internal unhappiness and discomfort on somebody else? And if that is the case, then it's like that final, probably ongoing work of, how do I keep myself from stealing my peace and contentment? I think there's some layers to that as well.
Oh, for sure.
Man, I thought we were just going to like talk about like how to keep the haters away, you know, and draw some boundaries. But
I don't think you ever keep the haters away. I mean, they're around. And honestly,
they're floating around here.
Honestly, the more strong you get in your authenticity and your ability to ground in yourself and your confidence, it almost feels like there are more haters.
Yes. Oh my God.
Because people see that, right? It's, you know, and I tell people this all the time. I'm like, when your light starts shining brighter, it's like when the mosquitoes go to the light or the moths go to the light, people notice that.
Yes.
And then you've got more people around you. And for some people, it's like, ooh, you're really shiny and I want to be in your light, right?
Yeah,
and
I want to share in that with you.
Right. And then there are people who are like, why are you so bright? You shouldn't be so bright. And I mean, this isn't like conscious. This isn't like they're making a conscious decision. It's just that irritates them. So then they're going to come at you and be like, and try to like bring you down a notch with them. Not in like a premeditated way. It's just what we do. Like
it's their own defense kind of mechanism, right? Their your brightness is making them uncomfortable,
right? And
they're lashing out to try to bring it down. Yes.
And that's a place where it's like it's the continued growth, right? I grow to the place that people notice. And then some people are going to come around and they're going to notice and they're going to be like, this is uncomfortable for me. So I'm going to try to get you here with me where I feel more comfortable in this interaction with you. And so the growth really is like, how do I continue with this level that I'm at? And also, hopefully, allow you to also sit in that space with me, right? Yes. Or not. But, oftentimes I find that people will tell me, like, when you are in certain spaces with certain people, there is a calmness there, right? Because of the way that maybe I'm interacting or what that inspires in other people. And not to say like I'm, not like tooting my own horn and like I am, whatever. But people have told me that. And then when I'm not there and the same group of people are together, things run amok. And I think some of that is because I have been able to cultivate the ability to sit in my own light regardless of what's going on around me. Like I can kind of preserve that to some degree. Now, does that mean I never get knocked off? No. Because there are lots of times that, something will happen and I'm like, well, here is all of my peace today.
You can have it.
And
signed, sealed, delivered. It is yours.
And I am going to sit here and just, be wild on the inside because I, am upset about what's going on.
But I do think that's important. Sitting in your light, sitting in your peace, and it's true. Like the brighter you get, the more courageous you are, the stronger you are, the more you stick to your morals, your values, your purpose.
Yeah.
People are going to come for you. They are. And like you said, and I don't think it's malicious. I don't think it's premeditated, but they are. And depending on what your core wounds are, like for me, like Miss Queen of Self-Esteem issues over here, like for a long time, like I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong, right? Because people are coming at me. But it's like you have to stay grounded in who you are and protect that peace in a way. I think that's a really good point because I think there's like this hope or this belief that like, I'll do the work, right? I'll feel good about who I am. I'll address that stuff and things will get easier. And in some ways they do.
Right.
But I also think in some ways they get harder. I really do.
Yeah. And you will attract people who have also done the work, because it's, it's no fun to be around somebody who hasn't done the work when you have done the work, right?
That's
it's
so
not,
true.
You don't want to spend a lot of time in that space because you're just like, oh, like you are at a completely different vibration than me. Like I'm not trying. The same way that, if you're at a lower vibration than somebody else, it might not be comfortable to be with them either. So you'll find people that match that with you.
Yes.
But also, how do you participate in the energy that's around you? Do you choose to participate in it, or do you choose to maintain your own energy? Being kind of one of these things where, are you giving away your peace, or are you keeping your peace? And I think when you were talking, I was thinking about like sitting in meetings with people. Like you've got a lot of people in a meeting, you're about to talk about a really difficult or controversial topic in that meeting. And oftentimes everyone will kind of get in the energy of anticipation and anxiety and irritated, because that's what's going on in the room, right? It's like when they say, you could have cut the air with a knife, you know, like where you feel it, where everybody feels that. And being able to say, this is happening around me, and I get to choose whether I'm going to participate in this energy or not, or I'm going to hold my own.
Yes.
And for me, it's, for everybody, it's different, right? We look at it a different way. We look at grounding a different way. We look at, maybe we just tell ourselves that. For me, it's really like, if I'm in a situation like that, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to be like, let me zoom out of this. Right? Because I don't need to participate in this energy. I need to participate in this conversation, but not in this energy. Like, I'm not going to sit in this energy of fear. I'm not going to sit in this energy of like shame and anger and all of the things. And also, if I don't sit in that energy, when I actually do participate in the conversation opposed to the energy, now I am addressing some of those things that I'm hearing in the feeling behind it, opposed to just having arguments about topics. Because I think I have been in lots of meetings where it's, just when we talk about work, the big decision's being made, a decision to pivot, a decision to change something. You'll have some people in the room who they're afraid.
Yes.
And if you're not really in touch with yourself, it's just going to sound like a lot of bickering and arguing about different points of what's happening. But if you can really pull yourself out of that energy and zoom out and look at it, you're like, oh, I see you. You're afraid of this because of X, Y, and Z. This might change the way that you have to operate. You're afraid that your position might not be as valued. You're afraid that somebody's going to look at you some kind of way because we're going to change this thing, right? So now when I contribute, I don't say that. I don't say hey, I see you over there being afraid, right? Because that's not going to be helpful. But maybe I start addressing those things. Maybe I start saying hey, if we made this change, it would not impact X, Y, and Z. I can start to bring down that energy in the room if I will stay in my own peace. If I choose to participate in that and I get down in the weeds with folks that way, then there's no
grown-ups in the room. Everybody is just and I think that's such a good reminder, because I imagine there's a lot of us, and I mean a lot of the work that I do is very adversarial, right? And I literally roll into meetings where everybody is suited up with their boxing gloves. We're we have come here to fight, and you know what I mean? And there is no other way to say it. But how much more productive could the conversation and the meeting and everything else be if at least a few of us were able to rise out of that energy? Because I think, there's that meme that says this meeting could have been a fist fight, right? Instead of this meeting could have been an email. But how do you still say the things that need to be said, still stick up for what needs to be stuck up for, but get yourself up out of the muck, right? Energetically.
Right.
I think that's a beautiful reminder.
Yeah. And then you leave that space with your peace intact.
Yes, because you haven't just shed your peace, and
regardless
dove into
of what happened.
End.
Even if I can't change the trajectory of what's happening in this space, I can still walk away with my peace intact and say okay, well, this.
I tried my hardest. I said what I needed to say.
This was a shit meeting, and we might have more of these, but I'm not going to hold on to that.
Right.
I was there, but I don't feel like I participated in making this bad. So I don't have anything I have to hold on to with this. That doesn't mean you just don't interact with people in order to avoid.
And that feels like a cop-out sometimes,
Yes.
right? When people are like, well, I'm not engaging in that. Like, well, no, you really need to. Like, you know, maybe because of your position, maybe because of your authority, maybe because of your knowledge, maybe because
you were invited to this space.
Proximity, maybe because you were invited to this space.
Yeah, it's time to participate.
You need to participate, but you can participate in a way that doesn't compromise your piece, who you are. Whew, that's some good stuff, Amber. That's some good leadership stuff. And especially for those of us, I think, that are doing work where we have to have a lot of hard conversations with a lot of stakeholders that, you know, have competing and varying interests and those types of things. I think that's a really good thing to remember.
Yeah. And I do think, especially as leaders, if we can maintain our own peace with our teams, even when things are going awry or there is conflict or decisions need to be made or whatever the case may be, if we can maintain our own peace, that gives us the ability to listen, right? If I don't maintain my own peace, I'm worried about myself and I am not listening to anyone else. If I can listen to what's going on around me, not only am I going to get the facts of what's happening around me or some variation therein, I am also able to say, okay, this person's point of view, because I've listened to them and I've heard the verbiage they've chosen to use, I've heard their tone of voice, I can see their body language, I know this person. Now I can say, okay, not only do I hear what you have to say factually, I can kind of see where it's coming from.
Yes.
And so as I address this, or as we continue the conversation, I can start weaving those pieces into the conversation in order for the conversation to become more productive and to teach other people around me that vulnerability is okay.
Yes.
Because when you say it, even if you don't say it directly to someone about a feeling that is happening or whatnot, it kind of gives that permission that, like, oh, yeah, I was feeling that. Maybe next time.
It's validating. I mean, all it is validating.
Right. But I think sometimes we talk about validating things and it's almost like, let me pair it back to what I'm hearing in a meeting, in public forum, like that didn't feel good.
No, don't do like the pretend validating like you're a first year social work student.
Right.
Like, no, you need to do like the let me see you. Let me see, like you said, hear what you're saying, see your body language, feel your energy, and let me signal to you, I get you.
Right.
I get where you're coming from.
Right.
Yes, that piece of it I think is huge and so important to be able to do as a leader.
Yeah. You know, if you're letting people take your contentment all the time, you're stuck inside trying to navigate your own swirling and you can't pay attention to what's going on around you in the same way. You don't get the same information from other people because you're not able to look at it through a lens of contentment. You're looking at it through your own lens of your own discontentment.
I would say, all your shit, it's all muddled by your stuff because your stuff is not in check.
Right. And I think that's why we talk about, just in leadership in general, the real need for people who are leading other people or people are looking up to do the work.
Yes.
Because if you don't do your own work, it's really hard, A, to do that, right? To stay in your own contentment. And B, it's hard to see some things that maybe other people are doing that you've already worked through and just like kind of, let me give you some breadcrumbs, right? Let me show you how to move through this in a different way.
No, I think that is when you decide to take a leadership role or when you move into that space, like it's, to me, I feel like you have this almost like ethical obligation to work on yourself because otherwise you will be bleeding out on the people. Yeah. The people around you. You know, really as a human, you're going to bleed out on the people around you no matter what.
Yep.
But in a leadership role, like, you know, people are, there is a level of trust and responsibility there that doesn't exist when you're just like bebopping around being you. And I think a lot of people don't take that seriously enough.
Right. And wouldn't it be wonderful if more people were like, I will take responsibility for my own shit.
Yes. I think it'd be great if leaders did that, if parents did that, if a lot of us in different facets of our life are in positions where people are looking up to us and relying on us, right? Just by nature of our role.
Right.
And so, one, we never want to let ourselves down because that's the main person you're letting
Right.
down if you don't do the work. But I think in those situations, you're also letting other people down too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you're creating your own misery all the time, people see that.
Yes.
They see that. And then when they create their own misery, they're like, oh, look at us. We're so unfortunate together.
Oh,
Right?
yes.
Look at
Fuck
all
these
this-
people. Look at what
right?
they're doing to us. We are so sad and it is their fault. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So don't let other people create your own misery, and don't create it for yourself.
Yes. Protect your peace. Don't sell it for pennies.
Yeah.
Or
Even
for
to
free.
yourself. Even to yourself.
Don't give yourself a deal on your contentment.
Yeah. There'll be no return on investment there.
All right. Pull a card for us.
All right. Let's take a deep breath together. And we will set the intention that we will receive exactly what we need from this card pull and from this podcast today. And hopefully we have started to see some places where we can be more content internally and where we can stop giving that away to other people and even to our own thoughts and our own, well, there it is. I just flipped over right in my hand and it's happiness. I am aware that being happy means that I am on the right path. And I think that speaks a lot to contentment.
Yep.
If I feel content, I know that I am going in the right direction. If I feel discontent, that is probably not the direction I want to be heading. And so when I am making choices about my actions or how I choose to think, if what is happening is that what I'm doing is causing discontentment and there is no happiness in sight,
Yes.
maybe I need to take a few steps back
Dial
and
it
take
back.
the other fork in the road and go in the other direction. I need to reevaluate what I really want and how I'm going to create my own happiness.
Yeah. I think it's hysterical that we pulled happiness.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes
It's
sense.
true.
And it's true. And if you are giving your peace away left and right, you're never going to be happy.
No.
And let that be, if you're never feeling peaceful, never feeling content, like you said, let that be a little signal to you that perhaps it's time to try something different.
Right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.